Let's get to Manchester United first, though. Rúben Amorim said his side did not exist in the first half. They came from 2-0 down to draw 2-2 against Everton at Goodison Park. Late drama too. Everton denied a late penalty overturned following an intervention from VAR. So we will start at the end then, Sam. Penalty or not?
Not
mess about.
Yeah, I thought it was a penalty, but I could see arguing both ways. I certainly didn't think it was a clear and obvious error, so I was really surprised that it was overturned. And I think also, I think this has been discussed, but they didn't seem to show the referee all the angles, and perhaps the most incriminating angle. And maybe they shouldn't pick angles based on what's most incriminating, but it felt like the angles that the referee did see on the monitor weren't the ones that showed what happened the clearest. So for me, it is a penalty. There's a clear shirt pull, if not two clear shirt pulls. And I think Ashley Young's got a chance of getting that ball if he's not pulled back. What I would say, though, is that I don't think Young helps himself with the way he goes down. It's very dramatic. If you see his legs kind of fly out behind him, you can see how somebody might look at that and think he's gone down kind of more excessively or more dramatically than he needed to. So maybe that's played part into it. But yeah, I was surprised that was overturned for sure.
I think the point is, and it's certainly a point that David Moyes was making yesterday, is about this high bar that is supposed to be in place this season, that it needs to be, or in theory needs to be, an absolute clanger for it to be overturned, or to be a suggestion to go and have a look at it on the monitor. And yeah, it's very subjective. I was at Craven Cottage yesterday watching it in the press room, and it was probably a 50-50 call. So if that's the case, if the referee's made the decision on field, you should probably stick with it, shouldn't you?
Yes, you should. I mean, we use all of these phrases, again, as we were saying in the first part, referee's call, high bar, clear and obvious. The only thing that was clear and obvious yesterday was that his shirt was pulled. Now, I take the point about the theatricality of, going down in instalments, but that's neither here nor there. If the defender transgresses, that is a penalty. That is a penalty. And I can see why Ashley is in the referee's face there, because I don't think the referee's being guided correctly. So many things about the way the referees are making decisions right now concern me, not least the fact that we are told time and again that we don't want to re-referee the game, and all about the concept of referee's call, and yet the referee hasn't made that decision. And if he has been helped, but in inverted commas, by the VAR, why doesn't the VAR show him the one angle that would have vindicated what the referee's instinct had been in the first place?
And I think the other frustration is that it appears to be so formulaic that the moment a referee is sent to the screen, everyone knows it's going to be overturned, and there isn't seemingly a presence of mind from the on-field official to think, do you know what, I'm going to stick with what I just did 2 minutes ago and ignore the VAR, with the greatest of respect, because that's still a subjective decision, but I still think, to my mind, that's a penalty.
I mean, it almost feels as though if a VAR calls a referee to the screen, the VAR is going to show the angles that vindicate what he thinks, as opposed to what the referee might think. If a referee makes a decision, you would imagine the VAR would find every conceivable angle to support what the man in the middle has decided. But that doesn't appear to be the case.
Darren said there was a couple of things that were clear and obvious yesterday. One thing is that the man behind him, Bruno Fernandes, without him, Manchester United would be in a bit of a pickle, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on the Bruno Fernandes. I know that sounds odd, given that he's obviously their best player and he scores all their goals and creates all their goals. But I mean,
other than that, he's rubbish, Sam, isn't he? Yeah, great.
No, he's certainly not rubbish. He's a long way from being rubbish. It's just, I think, and I thought this for quite a few years now, so this sort of dates back pre-Amorim, but he's the kind of player who always tries to make things happen, and that's great, and that's why he gets so many goals and assists. But also, he's quite loose. He gives the ball away a lot. I think yesterday, for example, in the build-up to the second Everton goal, it was him beaten quite easily on the pressing, and just he wasn't particularly alert to it or strong with it. And I think there are certain things that he does that don't help the structure of the team that much. And I think the fact that United have built around Bruno Fernandes for quite a few years and haven't been particularly good as a team for quite a few years, I'm not sure that's entirely irrelevant. I'm not sure those two facts are totally disconnected. And someone asked me earlier, would Bruno Fernandes get into every other team in the Premier League? And I don't think he would. I think a lot of managers at the top of the table would be looking for a midfielder with more control, more patience, more sort of game management.
So he wouldn't get in Liverpool's best team?
I don't think he would.
Arsenal?
I don't think he would. And I'm probably going to come off this and have loads of tweets of people aiming stuff at me, because obviously he's a fabulous player, and I should make that clear. And you see his technical skill, the way he scores goals, things he creates, fantastic. But I think there are a lot of less eye-catching things that he doesn't do quite so well. And I do worry, for United's sake, that he might not be the long-term answer for that reason.
Do you think he would?
What, Liverpool's?
Yeah.
I think there's an argument that he could play in that 10 position, but I think the amount of work that Dominic Szoboszlai does off the ball in terms of the pressing and being the guy who sort of leads the press a little bit, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Arsenal?
It's just turned into a grilling down. I'm not sure I like this. I quite like asking the questions, not answering them. Arsenal, does he? Again, if you play Martin Ødegaard in that position, it's tight, isn't it? You could play with just Declan Rice and then both Ødegaard and Bruno Fernandes ahead of that if you wanted to. You? I'm going to get away from this. I'm really uncomfortable with the whole thing.
I think, as far as Liverpool are concerned, the temperament of the Liverpool players, for me, suggests that he wouldn't get into that side, because Jonathan Northcroft earlier in the season did a terrific piece in the Sunday Times where he talked about the number of yellow cards that Bruno picks up just before half-time, when he's remonstrating with referees over decisions that have been made when the team's backs are against the wall. And I think that you see how much emotion is taken out of much of Liverpool's game. And for me, I think that's the reason why they go with the likes of Szoboszlai, why they go with many of the players they have. A lot of the leadership in the Liverpool side, yes, everyone can pick out an example of when a player has shown up extremes of emotion, but I think generally, when you look at Van Dijk, the leadership kind of sets that tone. And I think as far as Manchester United are concerned, maybe it's not there. That said, I do think that Fernandes really has done well so far this season. He scored the most goals, 6 goals so far this season, jointly with Ahmad. There's a bit of a drop-off to the rest of them. He and Ahmed both have provided 6 goals and 6 assists in the Premier League. Again, big drop-off behind them to all the rest who have got 1. And his quotes on to Manchester United's in-house TV station, where he says last night, at half-time when we came in, I had to look at my own performance first. I had to set a standard, and he came out with the intent of doing that in the second half. And that's why he pretty much ran the show. So I don't want to sit here traducing him at all. He's a terrific player, and he is showing that with the backs, the collective backs of Manchester United, very much against the wall.
I guess the wider question then, aside from Bruno Fernandes, is are you seeing any signs of life and improvement and progress under Rúben Amorim?
Not yet. It's been quite a while now, and still no. It's amazing how, even from the day he arrived, how insistent he was that this was the system and that's what's going to happen, irrespective of the tools at his disposal or the players he has. And it's just not worked so far. And I fear for United that if there's no sort of sense of positive progress, or even just a few decent performances over the next few months before this season ends, because they're not going to go down, but if there's no if they don't go into that summer with some belief that this core group of players can play this system, then where does it go from there if the players aren't buying into it? I mean, you look at them yesterday in the first half, and they don't seem to know what they should be doing and when. And this is the only system he's ever going to play. And that feels like long-term, if they need to have something to believe in and buy into. And have they got that right now?
I think that's a really important question, because, and it's a question that is kind of growing within the journalistic fraternity, and I'm sure within the ex-player punditry fraternity as well, because great managers have different ways to play. They can adapt, particularly to events. And with the club falling like a stone down the Premier League, you cannot possibly continue to say, I'm going to stick to my principles. If you look at these headlines up here, they were rescued yesterday by that VAR decision, because had it not been for that decision, they'd have lost. They were rank, as you can see in the middle caption. I look at the subdeck of this one over here, underneath looted. They were lucky to steal a point. And it is not by design that they are managing to keep their heads above water. I look at the way that they play at the moment. I'm sure you do, our colleagues do as well. And we all are of the opinion that it's been a disappointment under Amorim. And when he arrived and he was so charismatic and engaging, he's a superb communicator. He'd done brilliantly with Sporting. We thought this is the guy to get this group of players into shape, well organised, confident. And it's just been chaotic so far. And I cannot tell you where their next points are going to come from. Now, you can't just blame him. The situation at the club is toxic, and I think it is much more complex than saying, is he the right man? The leadership at the club, right from the Glazers downward, is absolutely shambolic, with their £1 billion debt and the calibre of players that they're bringing in, and the forcing onto the shoulders of young players responsibility. You saw Varane's quotes in midfield, terrific interview with The Athletic, where he said, look, when I was at Real Madrid, if you were 18, 19 years of age, you go in the dressing room and you learned, you watched, you didn't play any football, you learned about the culture, and the senior players carried you. At Manchester United, they are loading it all onto the teenagers, and that's a big part of why they are where they are right now.
And a lot of it is interlinked, isn't it? That a lot of what Darren was talking about there, about things that are going on above Rúben Amorim, eventually bleed their way through to what the manager's got to work with. So you can talk about the system, but one of the points about the system is no matter if they're playing 3-4-3, 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, if the players aren't good enough, it doesn't matter what you play. He's then talking last week about the money isn't there for a rebuild. So he might get to May and think, these players can't do what I want in a 3-4-3, but what's he going to do about it?
Exactly. So in that situation, hiring a manager who's insistent on 3-4-3 without a squad that is capable of playing 3-4-3 and having no financial means to turn that squad around feels like a bad decision, basically, when you put it that way. So either they've got the right man and the wrong squad, or the right squad and the wrong man, because those two things don't seem to be aligned in any way right now. Of course, it could change. These players could develop, they could be coached, they can get better, they can learn the system, and I think that is effectively United's best hope now, that the players they've got, and that they can make a few sales in the summer, get a few players in, and it doesn't
always... Do you
end
up then having to sell your best players to generate the money, because they're also talking about PSR a little bit, that you might have to bite the bullet with a Fernandes or a Mainu.
Garnacho.
Yeah, to try and regenerate the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it requires tough decisions. They've made so many bad decisions over so many years that it now requires really difficult ones, and it's going to be ones that fans don't really like. But that's what they're going to have to do if they, if they're going to turn this around. And I do think it doesn't necessarily take 11 new players to turn this into something functional. It might be just one or two who really know the system. And for example, someone like Ugarte, you would have thought, given that he played with Amorim before, that he'd be the perfect man for this system. Maybe a couple more like him, and it just suddenly clicks a bit more. But I don't. You can't watch them right now and feel hugely optimistic for their future, to be honest.
Papers?
Yeah, Sam Wallace sums it up as ever, succinctly and superbly. Talks all about the fact that it was the one-man show of Bruno Fernandes to keep Manchester United's collective head above water. And he asked where they would be without him. And it's a really legitimate question, because there are so few other consistent performers apart from Fernandes. And for all we might say, and the debates and whatnot, for Manchester United, he is absolutely crucial. I want to spin very quickly on to the next one as well, because I think there is a bigger picture which is very concerning in the Sunday Mirror. And what the Mirror have done is given two stories equal importance, because the Premier League footballing future of Manchester United is of grave concern. We've spoken about it a second ago, and we know all about the VAR decision. I want to point you to this story in the bottom right-hand corner as well. Booted. Picture of Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Look at the subdeck. Another 200 job cuts as staff bracing themselves for that savage, says Simon, round of redundancies. And he says that employers have been summoned for a meeting that will take place tomorrow. They're expecting to be told that more jobs are going to be slashed from the payroll. And that's so much more serious than everything that goes on the pitch. The morale at the club is toxic. The soul is being stripped away from Manchester United. And we know that they're a club where the players value the staff as much as the staff value the players. We know that they're a club where there is a real collective will to succeed, and we've heard it so many times, you know, not just on the pitch, not just from the captain or the manager, but right down to the tea lady, right down to the receptionist. We saw one beloved member of staff. We saw the turnout for her funeral after her passing very recently. These are people who are valued by the players and by extension by the fan base, and they're being stripped away. And Simon's piece it's a very extensive piece, and it's well worth a read as well, because he talks about the fact that the club would appear, and you know, we'll hear from the club eventually, I'm sure, so I don't want to make any presumptions on their behalf, but he talks about the fact that they appear to be moving away from all the things that made Manchester United a superpower.
They were playing better football, they're winning games, they're competitive. He's made a difference. If David Moyes can make a difference at Everton, why is it okay for Rúben Amorim to not be able to make a difference at Man United? Are we just continually looking at the players? And I know the players need to step up, but he also has to take responsibility for keep putting the team out in the same formation and getting the same results, the same performances. So if other managers in different leagues come in with inferior squads and make a difference, why is there a pass for Rúben Amorim?
A couple of things about Amorim. Certainly coming into this one, him saying, yeah, listen, David Moyes is doing a far better job than me. Listen, I don't get it. And we spoke about Amorim in weeks gone by, talking about how bad Manchester United is, the worst Manchester United team ever, and just being, I don't understand that tactic. I don't understand that tactic of being as negative as he has been about his, whether it's true or not. I don't understand the tactic. Then coming into this one, understanding where Everton are, or more to the point, were, what you've been given and tasked with to come in now and then say that before the game. The other thing to this, and this is where I give a lot of the Manchester United players some credit in the second half, I have not seen a man look as beaten, a manager look as beaten coming out for a second half as Amorim looked, retaking his seat on the sideline at Old Trafford. Now, you're 2-0 down. I expect you're going and you've read the riot act, and maybe he has. But you now have to be up for the fight. You have to show your players that you're up for the fight. He comes and takes a seat on the sideline, and I cannot tell you when last I've seen a manager look as beaten. So I give Manchester United players credit in the second half for their response, because his body language suggested to me that it wasn't coming. And maybe, as Craig pointed out, maybe Jordan Pickford had a little bit to do with that. We'll kindly disagree on who is at fault or who takes the credit. But give Manchester United some credit for a second half display that I don't think the manager had an awful lot to do with.
Rúben Amorim looks to me like a man that would take a payoff and a one-way ticket back to Portugal and just move on. And just move on with his career, because he's found himself in a mire with this club, with this squad of players, and he's, as I said, he's not without blame because he's setting the tactics. But let's not forget about the bigger picture here. As they sit in 15th, Manchester United in 15th, no team in the Premier League they are safe against, none. Is the Glazers, who still own the club, have riddled that club with debt and taken money out of it for fun, right? For years, and that's been evident. But they've pulled off an even better stroke in the last 18 months or so. They've had Ineos's pants down with what they've done. Ineos have gone in there. They have no idea what they're doing. And they've spent, their investment, I believe, was around 1.25 billion initially. And they've gone in there. The morale is horrendously low. They're firing low-level employees. They're all over the shop. It's terrible. Before we even get to the footballing side of it, it is terrible. So between the Glazers and Ineos, there is not a clear directive of how this club, if you saw the accounts this week, was just one thing. They are in a position that I don't think anybody would have thought of quite a few years ago. So there's two parties to blame here. The Glazers are well to blame, and I think Ineos, they had no idea how damaging things were behind the scenes before they chucked all that money in.
Okay, so
Let's not win Europa League.
Apart from
that, it's all right.
apart
from that, I mean, how can Man United sit in the 15th and only be looking because there's 4 really poor teams below them at least, and Wolves have just won against Bournemouth. Only for that reason are they probably safe from being in a relegation dogfight. I mean, that's a hell of a position to be in.
Okay, you get the final thought on this clash, Don.
I mean, Craig's absolutely nailed it from the hierarchy and from the top end of the club. I mean, you could do a whole show on it, and we probably will or have. I think now, if you're Rúben Amorim, you've got to find somehow winning the Europa League and trying to get Champions League football, because apart from that, it's going to be an absolute...
A late fight back does not camouflage the extent of Manchester United's frailties or reprieve at Goodison Park. It was a fight back that could have been rendered redundant but for referee Andrew Madley overturning his decision to award Everton a 96th minute penalty. The video assistant referee did not show the full offence on the pitchside monitor. No wonder Alejandro Garnacho patted the match official on the back afterwards. Rúben Amorim's team produced a dire first-half performance. Beto and Abdoulaye Doucouré took advantage to set Everton on course for a 5th win in 7 league games under David Moyes. The hosts remained comfortable until United captain Bruno Fernandes curled in a 72nd minute free kick. Amorim's side, improved by the introductions of Garnacho and Chidozie Obi, suddenly sensed an escape and levelled through Manuel Ugarte's first goal for the club. The real escape came in stoppage time when Onana parried Idrissa Gueye's shot and Ashley Young was prevented from reaching the rebound by Matthijs de Ligt and Harry Maguire. De Ligt pulled the former United man's shirt before he theatrically dived to the ground. Maguire grabbed him too. Madley pointed to the spot but was advised to review the decision by VAR. Only the Maguire incident was shown on repeat and Madley deemed that no foul had been committed. The shirt pull by de Ligt was not shown, much to Moyes' bewilderment. So they only mentioned the bit they needed to mention and not the shirt pull? Asked the Everton manager when informed of Professional Game Match Officials Limited's official version of events. You shouldn't be getting away with pulling jerseys. The referee made the correct decision at the time and should have stuck with it. Amorim had a different take, unsurprisingly. It was a soft touch and I think it was clear to overturn the decision, the United manager said. Not up for debate was Amorim's admission that United didn't exist in the first half. The visitors were woeful, showing no attacking intent, no ideas, no energy, no spirit and little defensive cohesion. The central midfield pairing of Casemiro and Ugarte were comfortably outplayed by their opposite numbers Gueye and James Garner, a former United Academy graduate, and Everton dictated proceedings for almost 70 minutes. Moyes' bigger regret was not establishing a 3-goal cushion in that time. Everton took the lead when United failed with 5 attempts to clear a Jack Harrison corner. Beto swept Doucouré's header beyond Onana from close range and after a VAR check lasting 3 minutes, for offside against the striker and Jesper Lindström, the goal eventually stood. It was Beto's 5th goal in 4 games, as many as Rasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee have scored all season. The United forwards appeared out of their depth at Goodison. United's XG was a pitiful 0.04 for a first half in which an Ugarte shot that drifted harmlessly wide and a Zirkzee header, also off target, were the sum total of their attacking endeavours. From that base level the only way was up. Garnacho and Obi injected overdue urgency into the United performance, but the quality required of a club with high ambitions remained absent. Everything changed when Fernandes reduced the arrears. The United captain struck one free kick into the Everton wall, Doucouré's raised arm to be exact, after Gueye was penalised for a foul on Garnacho. Fernandes curled the second, closer attempt, into Jordan Pickford's left-hand corner with the Everton goalkeeper rooted.